You can be surrounded by people, and still feel completely invisible. It doesn't look like loneliness. That's what makes it difficult to recognize. Because nothing about your life suggests absence. There are people around you. Conversations happen. Messages come in. You go places. You interact. From the outside, everything appears normal. Even full. If someone looked at your life from a distance, they wouldn't see a problem. They would see movement. Connection. Engagement. They would see a person who is part of things. Included. Present. Involved. And in many ways, that's true. But there are moments, small, quiet moments, where something feels off. Not during the noise. Not when everything is happening at once. In between it. In the spaces where nothing is demanding your attention. You're sitting at the table. A meal in front of you. The room is not silent. There is movement somewhere in the house. A television playing softly in another room. The faint sound of someone walking past. Life is happening. Close to you. Around you. You take a bite. Chew slowly. There is nothing unusual about the moment. Nothing missing on the surface. And then, there it is. Not a thought. A feeling. Something missing. It doesn't interrupt you. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't even fully form. It just exists quietly underneath the moment. You don't stop eating. You don't look around. You don't react. Because nothing seems wrong enough to justify a reaction. So you continue. Finish the meal. Stand up. Carry the plate to the sink. Rinse it. Place it down. Everything continues exactly as it should. And yet, something hasn't resolved. The feeling doesn't go away. It doesn't grow either. It just stays. Later that day, you're sitting across from someone. A conversation that should feel normal. They're talking. You're listening. Nodding at the right moments. Responding when appropriate. Your tone is correct. Your timing is correct. Everything about the interaction is technically right. You are present. You are engaged. You are doing everything that connection requires on the surface. And yet, something feels distant. You hear the words. You process them. You respond. But you're not fully inside it. There's a layer between you and the moment that you can't quite remove. It's not thick. It's not obvious. But it's there. Like a thin separation that doesn't block the interaction, but softens it. You say something. They respond. The conversation flows. It even feels pleasant. Comfortable. Familiar. But underneath it, something doesn't connect. You notice it in the pauses. In the space after a sentence ends. In the moment where something should land, but doesn't fully. You walk away afterward. And the realization lingers longer than expected. That felt surface level. Not fake. Not forced. Just not deep. You don't blame the other person. Nothing they did was wrong. Nothing you did was wrong. And that's what makes it harder to understand. Because when something is broken, you can point to it. Fix it. Move on. But this isn't broken. It's incomplete. You sit down later. Pick up your phone. Scroll through messages. Conversations. Updates. People reaching out. People responding. You read them. You recognize the names. The patterns. The rhythm of interaction. You could reply. You probably will. But before you do, you pause. Because something becomes clear. None of this reaches you the way it used to. Not because it's meaningless. Because it doesn't land. The words register. But they don't stay. They don't move inward. They remain on the surface. Like something that touches you but doesn't enter. You lock the phone. Set it down. Lean back slightly. And now the thought begins to form. Quiet at first. Almost dismissible. I feel alone. You immediately question it. That doesn't make sense. You're not alone. There are people in your life. People you talk to. People who know you. People who would respond if you reached out. You can list them. You can picture them. You can trace the connections. And yet, the feeling doesn't adjust. Because what you're experiencing is not isolation. It's something more specific. Something harder to name. You stand. Walk slowly into the hallway. The house feels the same. Familiar. Comfortable. Nothing has changed. But now, it feels quieter than before. Not physically. Internally. The quiet is not around you. It's inside the experience. You stop near the window. Look outside. People passing. Cars moving. Life happening everywhere. Movement. Interaction. Energy. And suddenly, the contrast becomes visible. You are surrounded by life, but not fully inside it. You are present. But not reached. You walk back slowly. Sit down again. And the realization sharpens. You are surrounded, but not seen. That lands differently. Because now it's not about presence. It's about recognition. Not whether people are there. But whether anything in you is actually being touched. You think about the last few days. Conversations. Interactions. Moments. How many of them felt like someone actually saw you beyond the surface? Not just heard your words, but felt your presence. Felt something real from you. The number is smaller than you expected. And then another layer appears. How many times did you actually show yourself fully? Not filtered. Not adjusted. Not shaped to fit the moment. Just, present. The number is even smaller. You lean back. Exhale slowly. And now the truth becomes clearer. Loneliness doesn't always come from being alone. Sometimes it comes from being unrecognized in your own life. You sit there longer. Letting that idea settle. Because it doesn't accuse anyone. It doesn't blame anything. It just reveals something that was already there. Something that has been happening quietly for longer than you realized. You are not disconnected from people. You are disconnected inside connection. And that is a very different kind of loneliness. By midday, the feeling hasn't faded. It hasn't intensified either. It has stabilized. And that makes it harder to ignore. Because now it's not just a passing moment. It has structure. You move through the house slowly. Not because you're tired. Because there is no urgency pulling you forward. You adjust something on the table. Move a chair slightly. Open a cabinet. Close it again. Small movements. Familiar. Automatic. But your attention is not on them. It's on the pattern forming underneath. You didn't suddenly become lonely. That's the first thing that becomes clear. There was no moment where everything changed. No event that explains it. No turning point you can point to. You became less visible, over time. You sit down. Lean forward slightly. Elbows resting on your knees. And now your mind begins to reconstruct the process. There was a time when connection felt different. Not necessarily deeper. But more immediate. More direct. Less filtered. You spoke without running everything through layers of evaluation. You reacted without measuring the impact first. You expressed something as it was happening, not after it had been processed. And because of that, people met you differently. There was less distance. Less control. Less adjustment. More contact. You think about that version of yourself. Not idealizing it. Just observing. It wasn't better. But it was, more available. Then life changed. Gradually. Quietly. Without announcing itself. You needed to be more stable. So. You became more controlled. You needed to be more reliable. So you became more careful. You needed to avoid unnecessary conflict. So you became more measured. None of this was wrong. In fact, it worked. It made your life smoother. More predictable. Easier to manage. It made relationships easier to maintain. It made interactions cleaner. Less complicated. You became someone people could rely on. Someone who didn't create unnecessary friction. Someone who understood how to keep things steady. And over time, that version of you became normal. Expected. Even appreciated. But here's the part that becomes visible later. The part that doesn't show itself while everything is still working. When you reduce what you show, people reduce what they see. That sentence doesn't hit immediately. It settles slowly. Because it doesn't feel like something you chose. It feels like something that happened. But the more you sit with it, the clearer it becomes. Every time you filtered a reaction, you removed a layer of visibility. Every time you softened what you felt, you reduced what could be perceived. Every time you chose stability over honesty, you made yourself slightly harder to read. Not invisible. Just, less defined. Less specific. Less real. You stand. Walk toward the kitchen. Pour a glass of water. Drink it slowly. The action is simple. But your attention stays on the realization. You didn't become invisible overnight. You became less visible gradually. Not through a single decision. Through repetition. Small, consistent adjustments. Again and again. Until they stopped feeling like adjustments. And became default. You walk back slowly. Sit again. And the realization deepens. You learned how to maintain connection, without revealing yourself. That is the skill. And it is a powerful one. You can talk. Respond. Engage. You can be present in every interaction. You can participate fully, on the surface. But you don't fully expose what's actually happening inside you. Not because you're hiding. Because you've learned how to function without needing to. And because of that, people meet you at the level you present. Not the level you experience. That gap is where the loneliness forms. You pick up your phone again. Scroll through messages. And now you notice something different. The pattern. Most of your interactions are functional. Informational. Light. They move. They flow. They work. But they don't reach depth. And depth requires something you've been minimizing. Risk. You lean back. Slightly. And another layer appears. You didn't lose connection. You made it safe. That lands more heavily. Because it reframes everything. Safe connection. Predictable. Controlled. No unnecessary tension. No exposure. No moments where something might be misunderstood. No friction. No vulnerability that might not land correctly. It's efficient. It's stable. It's manageable. And it works. But here's the cost. Safe connection rarely reaches depth. Because depth requires uncertainty. It requires something unscripted, unfiltered, uncontrolled. And those are the exact things you've been reducing. You think about how many times you adjusted your tone before speaking. How many times you reworded something in your head before saying it. How many times you chose the version of yourself that would be easiest to receive. Not fake. Just, edited. And over time, the edited version became the default. Not a choice. A pattern. You stand. Walk into the hallway. The mirror catches your reflection. This time, you pause. Just briefly. Not analyzing. Just noticing. This is the version of you people interact with. Stable. Measured. Easy to be around. Understandable. But now, you see something else. This version is clear, but not complete. You move on. Because now the structure is undeniable. You didn't become alone. You became someone people could be around, without ever reaching your real depth. You sit down again. Slower this time. More aware. And the final realization of this moment settles in. You didn't lose connection. You limited it. And the loneliness you feel now, is not from absence. It's from partial presence. Evening is where it becomes undeniable. The day gives you just enough movement to stay slightly ahead of what you're feeling. Tasks. Conversations. Small distractions. Enough structure to keep things from settling too deeply. But evening removes that. It slows everything down. The house quiets. The light softens. And suddenly, there is nothing left between you and the feeling. You turn on a single lamp. The room contracts into a smaller, more contained space. Shadows settle into the corners. The air feels still. You sit down. Hands resting loosely together. And for a moment, nothing happens. Then your attention shifts inward again. And this time, the feeling doesn't stay subtle. It sharpens. A memory surfaces. Not dramatic. Just precise. You are sitting next to someone. Close enough to touch. A shared space. A shared moment. They are speaking. Maybe telling you something about their day. Maybe explaining something that matters to them. You're listening. Nodding. Responding when needed. Everything about the moment looks normal. Even comfortable. But underneath it, something else is happening. You feel it clearly now. You are alone. Not physically. Structurally. You are there, but not reached. They are there, but not touching anything real inside you. You say something. They respond. The interaction continues. And yet, the distance remains. Invisible. But undeniable. You shift slightly in the chair. And the realization tightens in your chest. This is not about being alone. This is about being unseen, in real time. You lean forward. Elbows on your knees. And another memory surfaces. You're in a group setting. People around you. Voices overlapping. Laughter. Energy moving in different directions at once. You are part of it. Saying things at the right moments. Getting the right reactions. The timing is right. The tone is right. Everything is working. And yet, you feel it again. That separation. Like you're slightly outside the experience, even while participating in it. You hear yourself laugh. But it doesn't feel fully connected. You speak. But it feels slightly delayed. Like there's a version of you performing, and another version observing from a distance. The moment passes. No one notices. Because nothing is wrong. But something is missing. You sit back slowly. And the rupture begins to form. Not emotional first. structural. You have learned how to exist in connection, without being inside it. That sentence lands clean. Because it explains everything. You didn't lose connection. You learned how to simulate it. Not in a deceptive way. In a functional way. You know how to respond. How to engage. How to maintain interaction. But the depth, the actual contact, is reduced. You stand. Walk slowly into the kitchen. Open the fridge. Look inside. Close it again. The movement is automatic. But now it feels different. Because you are aware of something you've been doing for years without noticing. You weren't just connecting with people. You were managing connection. Managing tone. Managing reactions. Managing what to show. Managing what to hold back. Managing how things land. And over time, that management replaced presence. You walk back slowly. Sit again. And now the emotional layer arrives. Not explosive. Not overwhelming. But deep. Steady. Difficult to ignore. You feel alone, even when you're not alone. That is the rupture. Because it removes the last illusion. This isn't about circumstances. It's about experience. You lean forward again. Hands clasped tighter now. And the sharpest truth surfaces. You didn't become lonely because people left. You became lonely because connection stopped reaching you. That lands with weight. Because it shifts everything inward. You think about all the interactions. All the conversations. All the moments where everything seemed fine. And now, you see what was underneath them. You were there. But not fully open. You were engaged. But not fully present. You were visible. But not fully known. And then, the most uncomfortable truth arrives. Not slowly. Direct. You didn't just feel unseen. You made yourself harder to see. Your jaw tightened slightly. Because that sentence doesn't accuse. It reveals. You didn't disappear. You reduced what was available to be seen. You filtered. Adjusted. Controlled. Not because you wanted distance. Because you wanted stability. Because you wanted things to work. And they did. That's the problem. It worked. It made your life smoother. Easier to manage. Less complicated. But it came with a cost. Depth. You sit there longer. The room quiet. The lamp steady. And the emotional weight deepens. You have been present in your life, without being fully reached by it. The sentence lands clean. Because there's nothing to argue with. You can trace it across years. The way you respond. The way you adjust. The way you stay composed instead of exposed. Again and again. Until it became automatic. You stand. Walk into the hallway. Stop near the mirror. This time, you look directly. Not searching. Just seeing. And for a moment, the realization becomes physical. This is the person people interact with. This is the version they know. But it is not the full version of you. Not even close. You exhale slowly. And the final line of the rupture settles in. You are surrounded by connection, but living outside of it. The room behind you is quiet. The light low. And now, the question is no longer whether something feels off. You know exactly what it is. The question is harder. Do you want to keep living like this? Because now you see the full structure. Not absence of people. Absence of depth. And once you see that clearly, you can't go back to not knowing it. After the rupture, there is always an instinct. To look outward. To find the reason somewhere else. Maybe people aren't paying attention. Maybe they don't understand you. Maybe they're not trying hard enough to really see you. Those thoughts appear naturally. Because they offer something easier. A direction. An explanation. A place to put the weight. You sit there. The room's still quiet. The same lamp casting that narrow circle of light. And for a moment, you almost follow that instinct. Almost. But something stops you. Not forcefully. Just, clearly. Because something about that explanation doesn't fully land. It feels incomplete. You lean back slightly. Let the thought settle. And then another one appears. Quieter. More precise. What if this isn't just about them? The question stays. Not comfortable. But impossible to ignore. You shift slightly in your seat. Because now, you're not just looking at the experience. You're looking at your role in it. And that changes everything. You think back to those conversations. Those moments where something felt distant. Not what they said. What you showed. You remember how you responded. Measured. Controlled. Appropriate. But not fully open. Not fully there. You weren't hiding. But you weren't revealing either. And that distinction is where the truth begins to form. You didn't just feel unseen. You limited what could be seen. The sentence lands slowly. Because it doesn't accuse. It aligns. You think about how often you chose the version of yourself that was easiest to receive. Not the most honest. Not the most raw. The most manageable. The most stable. The most safe. You stand. Walk slowly into the kitchen. Place your hand on the counter. Still. And the realization deepens. You weren't just trying to connect. You were trying to control how the connection felt. Control how it was perceived. Control how it would land. Control how it would be received. And in doing that, you removed the very thing that creates real connection. Uncertainty. You walk back slowly. Sit again. And now the truth becomes clearer. Connection doesn't fail because people don't care. It fails because something real is missing from what is being exchanged. And that, something, is not always the other person. You lean forward slightly. Hands resting together. And another layer surfaces. You learned how to make connection work, without risking yourself inside it. That is the skill. And it's a powerful one. You can maintain relationships. Keep things smooth. Avoid unnecessary tension. Avoid misunderstanding. Avoid exposure. You can stay connected, without ever feeling vulnerable. And for a long time, that feels like strength. It feels like maturity. It feels like control. But now, you see the cost. You weren't just protecting yourself. You were limiting the depth that could ever exist between you and someone else. Because depth requires something you've been avoiding. Being seen before you know how it will be received. You exhale slowly. And the realization sharpens. No one rejected your depth. You never consistently offered it. That lands harder than anything before it. Because it removes the last layer of distance. It brings everything back to you. Not as blame. As clarity. You didn't lose connection. You shaped it. You defined the limits of it. Through what you allowed to be seen. And what you kept contained. You stand. Walk toward the hallway again. The mirror is there. You stop. Look. Not analyzing. Just acknowledging. This is the version of you people experience. Calm. Stable. Easy to be around. But now you see something else. This version is consistent. But it is not complete. You move again. Sit back down. And the final truth of this moment settles in. You didn't become lonely because people couldn't reach you. You became lonely because you stopped letting yourself be reached. That is the shift. Because now, the situation is no longer fixed. It becomes possible to change. Not by finding new people. Not by demanding more from others. But by altering something much closer. You. You lean back slowly. The room quiet. The light steady. And for the first time, this doesn't feel like something happening to you. It feels like something you've been participating in. Quietly. Consistently. Without realizing it. Until now. The room feels different now. Not because anything has changed. But because you're no longer avoiding what you've just seen. There is no urgency. No need to fix everything at once. Just clarity. You sit in the same chair. The same lamp. The same quiet. But your posture is different. Less guarded. Less prepared. More present. Because now, you understand something that wasn't clear before. You don't need more people. You need more of yourself inside the connection. That idea doesn't arrive as motivation. It arrives as direction. You're not trying to become more social. More open. More expressive in some exaggerated way. You're trying something much smaller. Much more precise. You're trying to stop removing yourself from the moment before it even begins. You stand. Walk slowly into the kitchen. The same space. The same light. The same stillness. You place your hand on the counter. And for a moment, you don't do anything. No task. No adjustment. No movement. Just pause. That pause feels unfamiliar. Because for years, your instinct has been to keep things moving. To respond. To act. To fill space. But now, you let the space stay. And in that space, something returns. Awareness. You walk back slowly. Pick up your phone. A message is still there. Simple. Neutral. The kind of message you would normally respond to immediately. Automatically. Without thinking. But this time, you don't reply right away. You look at it. And instead of reacting, you check something first. Yourself. What do I actually feel right now? The question is simple. But not automatic. Because it hasn't been part of your process. Not consistently. Not intentionally. You sit with it. Not forcing an answer. Just, not skipping it. And then, something small appears. A hesitation. A slight resistance. Not strong. But real. And instead of overriding it, you let it stay. That is the shift. You type a response. Then stop. Read it again. It sounds fine. Polite. Appropriate. But something is missing. You delete it. Start again. Slower. Less edited. Not revealing everything. Just, not hiding everything. I'm a bit off today. I'll get back to this later. You look at it. Simple. Clear. Different. Because it includes you. You send it. And nothing dramatic happens. No reaction. No shift in the outside world. But internally, something changes. You didn't just respond. You stayed present while responding. You didn't manage the interaction. You participated in it. That difference is small. But it is everything. You lean back. Let the moment settle. Because this is where change actually begins. Not in big conversations. Not in emotional breakthroughs. In small interruptions. Interruptions of the pattern that has been running automatically. The pattern of editing yourself. The pattern of reducing what you show. The pattern of keeping things safe at the cost of depth. You stand again. Walk toward the window. The reflection is faint against the darkness. You look at it. Not searching. Just observing. And this time, there is slightly less distance. Not gone. But reduced. Because now, you are not filtering everything before it appears. You are letting something real exist in the moment. You think about your next interaction. Not as something to manage. Something to enter. You don't need to say everything. You don't need to reveal everything. You don't need to force depth. You just need to stop removing depth before it has a chance to exist. That is the difference. You walk back slowly. Sit again. The room quiet. The light steady. And now, the structure of change becomes clear. Connection doesn't deepen because people try harder. It deepens when something real is allowed to stay in the space between you. Even briefly. Even imperfectly. Even in small ways. You don't need to become someone else. You don't need to reverse everything. You don't need to suddenly become open, expressive, or different. You just need to stop editing yourself out of your own connections. That is where it begins. And that is enough. The next day doesn't arrive any differently. There is no signal. No moment that confirms something has shifted. The same light comes through the window. The same quiet fills the space. The same routines are waiting. And from the outside, everything continues as it always has. But inside, something is not exactly the same. You wake up. Lie there for a moment. Not moving. Not because you're tired. Because you're aware. The instinct is still there. The part of you that prepares. That anticipates. That moves ahead before anything has even happened. It hasn't disappeared. It doesn't need to. But this time, you don't follow it immediately. You notice it. You let it slow. You sit up. Feet touching the floor. The room feels familiar. Unchanged. But your experience of it is slightly different. You stand. Walk into the hallway. The mirror catches you again. And this time, you stop. Not out of curiosity. Not to check anything. Just, to be there for a second longer. You look. Not at your face. At what you feel while looking. And something is different. Not dramatic. Not complete. But present. You don't look away immediately. You stay. Just long enough to register that you're there. Then you move. Into the kitchen. Fill the kettle. Turn it on. The sound rises slowly. You lean one hand on the counter. Wait. But this time, you don't rush past the waiting. You stay with it. Just a little longer than usual. The space doesn't feel empty. It feels available. You pour the coffee. Sit down. The same chair across from you. Still empty. Nothing about it has changed. And yet, it doesn't feel the same. Because now, you are not already leaving the moment. You are here. Inside it. Even if only slightly more than before. You take a sip. Set the cup down. And something becomes clear. You are still the same person. Still capable. Still able to navigate your life. Still able to connect. Still able to respond. That hasn't changed. But something else has. You are no longer moving through connection without yourself in it. You move through the morning. Small actions. Simple movements. Nothing significant. But inside those moments, something holds. A presence that wasn't there before. You notice when your mind moves ahead. Planning. Adjusting. Preparing. And this time, you don't follow it completely. You allow a gap. And inside that gap, you remain. A thought. A feeling. Something subtle. Something you would have filtered before. Now, it stays. Not long. Just long enough to exist. And nothing breaks. Nothing becomes unstable. Nothing goes wrong because you didn't respond immediately. Because you didn't adjust instantly. Because you allowed yourself to be part of the moment instead of just managing it. That realization is quiet. But it changes something fundamental. You don't need to become more visible by doing more. You become visible by removing less. You don't need to force connection. You allow it by staying present long enough for it to happen. You sit again later that day. A conversation begins. Familiar. Simple. Nothing unusual. And this time, you notice something. Not in them. In you. A moment where you would normally adjust. Soften. Edit. And this time, you don't do it immediately. You let the moment hold. Just slightly longer. And something real appears. Not big. Not dramatic. Just, unfiltered. And it lands. Not loudly. But clearly. They respond. Not differently. But more directly. Because something in you was actually there to meet them. That's when it becomes clear. Connection doesn't change when people change. It changes when you stop removing yourself from it. You lean back. The moment settles. Nothing extraordinary happened. But something real did. And that's enough. You don't need to become someone new. You don't need to undo everything you've built. You don't need to explain yourself. Or justify anything. Because this was never about others. It was about presence. You were never completely alone. You were just not fully present in your own connections. That is the shift. That is the difference. And that is why this feels possible. Because nothing is missing. Nothing is gone. It was just held back. Filtered out. Reduced. And now, it doesn't have to be. You sit there a little longer. The room quiet. The light soft. Nothing urgent. Nothing pulling you away. And for the first time in a long time, that quiet doesn't feel empty. It feels connected. Not to everything. Not perfectly. But enough. Enough to feel the difference between being around people, and actually being with them. You reach for the cup again. Take a sip. And this time, it lands. Not because the moment changed. Because you stayed.